Welcome to the Dylan Experience. Today is episode 80, and I've got a very special guest for you. But before that, make sure you like, subscribe, follow the channel, follow the podcast, do whatever you need to do to stay in touch with us. My guest today is actually someone I've had the honor of meeting in person, which is a little bit rare for me on this podcast, but she is the founder of Mindset Transformation Company and the creator of the Kick-Ass Life program, which I love the name, and we're going to talk about it. She works with people that want to get to the next level in life, to be able to heal the past, master mindset and emotions, and trust their intuition so they can have a kick-ass life and do the thing they are meant to do on this planet. So you can imagine I'm a little excited to spend the next hour or two talking with my guest today, Cyrina Talbott. Cyrina, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
I am as well. So, Cyrina, we are kind of co-located in the Milwaukee Brookfield area.
Yep.
Why don't you kind of give both me and the audience a little bit of an introduction into what you do first, and then we'll go into your story. But I want to know what you do first.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to say I found you on Instagram Reels, which I think is hilarious. And I was
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, she's in my area. So yeah, I work with a lot of business owners and individuals, but people who, this idea of a kick-ass life sounds real great and everything, and that you have a purpose and you're here to do something. I really believe that, but like crap gets in the way of that. And so that's where I help people. So when they've been working on something, trying to throw everything at it, or, even go to traditional therapy, or even working with a traditional business coach and like trying to work to change behavior and they're not getting anywhere and they have an understanding that it's a little deeper. And, I'm excited to talk to you today because that can involve trauma and it
Yep.
can involve things that happen to us when we're younger and we're like, well, that's in the past. I just want to sell something, or that's in the past. I just want to have a good relationship with my kid. And they come to this understanding like it's actually not in the past, it's here messing with you,
Yep.
and it needs to be addressed if you're going to get anywhere and change any behavior. So that's where I help people and hang out in that space. And so part of that, which we'll talk about today, is I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, because
Yep.
it's those things, if they're messing with you or on a subconscious level, which is very powerful. And if you don't change at the root of the issue, you're not going to get anywhere. So that's
Preaching
what I
to,
help people do. And then
preaching
you
to the
can
choir
live
over here.
your right, all this stuff. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners do too, but then you
Yep.
can live what I consider a kick-ass life, is like you're happy at the end of the day, you have peace, your good relationships with
Yep.
your significant other and your kids, and you can actually feel like you're winning,
Yep.
whatever that means for you. It doesn't mean like go make $1 million, but like you have peace in your
So
life.
my curiosity,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think that kind of purpose in life in which what you do now comes from nowhere. And so I'm really curious as to what turned you to kind of bring yourself to do what you're doing now. And as far back as you want to go, I'm willing to hear.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like Rumi or somebody that's like your greatest pain, ends up
Yeah.
being your greatest purpose or whatever. So yeah, for me, I never in a million years thought I'd be a hypnotherapist. Like we had a hypnotist at my high school graduation party. Like I sat in the back of the room and would not make eye contact because I thought I would like accidentally get hypnotized or something. Like I'm like, this guy's not controlling me. So yeah, so how I came to it was I had, trauma when I was younger. My dad was an abusive, he was an alcoholic. My mom was amazing and she left him at 6. But, before 6, there had been damage done. He was sexually abusive to me. And then my mom raised 4 kids alone. And so,
Wow.
I really helped raise my 3 younger siblings. There was a lot of poverty, there was a lot of chaos. We moved, I don't know, 12 or 13 times by the time I was a senior. I went to 4 different high schools. There's just a lot of chaos.
Wow.
And so I thought when I graduated high school, I'm like, yes, that's all done. And like, and even some of the trauma, like our minds are so amazing, they just block it because they're like, that's too much. So, And then in my 20s, so all of that led me, like when I was a teenager, like started drinking and smoking and doing drugs at like 14, and then got pregnant at 15 and had an abortion. Like just kind of, they say like trauma when you're younger is like a ticking time bomb, and then it like goes off, when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
Um, and just felt really worthless. Like it just left me feeling really, really worthless. And then I had like what I would call a religious experience with God, like because I was always searching, like there's got to be more. We don't just like party every weekend, live till 80 and then we die. So I was always looking for more. And I felt like I had this, experience, which I think was really real, with feeling love and forgiveness and all that powerful stuff. But then started going to church, and church is like, do this and do this, and you have to do this, and you have to like earn it and do all that kind of stuff. So I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to be, instead of getting it from drug and sex, my self-worth, I switched it over to like, I'm going to get it from being a good girl, doing
Yeah.
everything right. And so I did. And in my 20s, I started a homeless shelter, because like, if you're going to get your self-worth from something external, like that's a good way to do it. Because it's like, you can't have met, more people like you than when you like run a homeless shelter. Like you're definitely can like stamp yourself good with that. But through that process, like all the things I thought were gone in my past started coming up. So we were working with, women and families who were homeless. And so they've got trauma. And so that would trigger me. And like they had a lot of poverty and stuff. And so it was bringing up, my past and experiences that I had. And I would just shove it down
Yep.
and keep going.
Naturally.
And we had board members and donors, and we were out in the community. And I had all of this anxiety coming up from my past, and I would just shove it down and keep going. But it was messing with my relationships. I couldn't be present. And after 5 years, I was completely burned out, and like to the point where like I couldn't make any decisions. I couldn't keep going. I had wanted to like hand it over and like somebody else take over, because I had 4 kids and I didn't take any money from it for those 5 years. So I was working another job, like it was insane. But I was highly motivated, like this thing, if I succeed at this thing, then I'll finally feel good enough. And it didn't work, and it closed in 2012. And it just felt like someone had, like, it was official. All the worthlessness that had accumulated over all the years was like official. And it felt like someone had just stamped like failure over my life. And it was also wonderful, because that thing I had been chasing didn't work. And so I had this opportunity to look at myself, and instead of blaming other people or just keep trying something else, kind of, I began to heal. And so I went to my first therapist. Her name was Kathy. I went in. It was before Naomi House was the name of the organization. It was before it closed, toward the end, when it was like in the process. And I was like, okay, here's the deal. And I went into her office, and I was like, okay, I'm really angry. Like I hate a bunch of people. And how can we get this over with as fast as possible? Do you have a pill? And
People,
I love homework. Like give me homework, and let's not talk about my past. So
I love when people come in and are like, I'm going to take all the control and I know exactly how this process is going to work. And then,
yeah,
like, at this point, like, we're like, okay, we'll see.
well,
you can
you know what
push.
she did? She laughed at me.
Of course.
She laughed at me. And I was like, oh shit. Like, I'm going to have to look at my past. Like, I think you just know it. But
Yeah.
I was so scared. I was really scared of, and I wanted to talk about this. I was really scared to face my past, because I thought at some level somebody was going to like dig and
Yep.
we're going to like look at all this stuff, and they're going to get to this point where they're like, oh shit, you are messed up. Like there's nothing we can do. I think that was my biggest fear, that it was actually just going to confirm that I was messed up and broken. And I think I now work with clients, and I think that's a thing, that can happen too.
Well, I think there's a relationship with critical expression, right? Of like someone else being critical of you. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a historical kind of relationship that you have with that. And that's also part of it of like, how did people critique you as a child,
Oh, for sure.
right?
So yeah, when I was vulnerable growing up, that was dumb because you're going to get hurt
Yeah.
and that's going to be held against you. Right. And so you're like, well, I'm just not going to show anybody that because, and I think especially for men, like
Yeah.
being vulnerable when we grow up in unsafe environments is stupid.
Yeah.
So, we're like told be vulnerable and open when we're older, and our subconscious is like,
Nobody
no,
nobody tells you,
that's not
like,
okay.
nobody shows you it's okay, and nobody tells you how to make it okay.
Right. Right. And so that was a big scary process. I also thought, like, if I look at these things, that I knew were there, like I had memories come up at different times, like I flashbacks or whatever of my dad being abusive. I had huge fears, things would trigger me. Then I'm like, why is this triggering me? Like, why is being alone with this person triggering me? Why is
Right.
someone yelling like super triggered, like more than normal? So I had suspicions of everything. And I thought once I like unleashed or let those emotions out, I would never, ever, ever be able to close it up. I thought I would just cry forever, or I thought I would go crazy, which I also think is a common thing that people do.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I went to different therapists. Kathy was absolutely amazing. And then I went to different ones, and I ended up talking about it a lot. And I ended up learning, like, oh, when this stuff happens to you when you're younger, you're messed up. You're codependent, or you're a people pleaser, or you can't say no, you don't have boundaries. And like I learned all those things, and I got to this point where I was like, yep, but I actually want to change. And it felt like talking about it was really good and really helpful because it gave me a place to understand why I did what I did, but I actually wanted to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me to, first of all, get super discouraged because I'm like, oh my God, like I cannot tell myself an affirmation for 5 years because they're like, your brain can change in 5 years of repeating this to you every day. I'm like, dude, 5 years is a long time to be super anxious in this, situation, because that was older science. And so as I kept learning and I'm a voracious reader and, studying things and learning. This is before Instagram and TikTok and that kind
Yep.
of stuff is like so available now, which is amazing. I learned about neuroplasticity and neuroscience, and I learned that our brains could change, which was amazing. And then I learned that this concept of like the subconscious, that it gets programmed before your age 5 to 7, and it runs the show.
Mm-hmm.
And some scientists say it's 1,000,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. Some say like 30,000. Either way, it's a lot. And you're not like, you can tell yourself in the mirror every single day, I'm wonderful, I love myself. And like, if your subconscious doesn't agree, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to understand that. And also the idea that when you work with the subconscious, when you can get to things at the root, you can change it quickly. It doesn't have to take 5 years of repeating something every single day.
Yeah.
And that led me to learn about, hypnosis. And I studied about it because I'm very much like, whatever I do, like I believe in meditation, but only because there's a lot of science behind it, because I hate, like, part of me hates this stuff, like I don't hate it, but I highly resist it. Like I highly resist this stuff. It's like, I would rather like just work a lot than like sit and do nothing. Right. Like, so I do nothing and I do meditate and I do this work because it works. And in my brain, I'm like, it's the shortest way to get it done. Like the shortest way to heal is to do that thing I don't want to do, which is sit still and breathe.
It's funny because, like it's something that I don't really talk about all that much, but the things that I talk to clients about, I talk about it in meetings, but I don't tend to talk about like all of the things that I talk about in meetings on my podcast and on my social
Sure.
media. And
Yeah.
so this is a really interesting conversation to have, like, two people that are practitioners
Yeah.
talking about the things that, like, I'll do it, but I don't fucking like it. Right. Like,
And I think that's okay. Like,
yeah.
I think that there can be so much shame from people that are like, oh, I'm so woke and so enlightened. And I'm like, I do this stuff because like it works. And I don't want to yell at my kids. And
Right.
I want good relationships. And like, it does not come naturally, and I don't think it comes naturally to anybody, but I think it's really helpful to like just be honest about this stuff. And it's
Yeah.
my honest, maybe there are people that do, really enjoy it. It's like when I come across, like, some people are like, yeah, when you come across an emotion or anger and you just sit with it. I'm like, I come across it, I'm like, why the heck is this here? Why do I have to do this? I already did this. Why is it like happening again? And I get mad because I'm like, I've been doing the work so long. Like, why do
Yeah.
I have to keep doing it? But then, yeah, when you can have that conversation with somebody else, it just,
Right.
you know, takes shame out of it. So, um, yeah, I don't know what we were talking about, but it's good.
Well, I mean, I just I love your realness. Like, I just want to thank you for being as expressive as you are. Like you've talked about some really difficult things like sexual trauma and abortion and, childhood trauma of any kind is hard enough to talk about, but let alone make it any kind of sexual. I think it's even more difficult. And I just want to thank you for being able to not just thank you, but to be honored to listen to that as a person that, I sit here and listen to people talk about that all day, but it's in a private setting. It's not recorded. It's not something that anybody
Mm,
else is going to watch. Like,
yeah.
and so I'm like, I'm honored, and I'm also curious, like, what brought you to a point of being able to be comfortable enough talking about that? And obviously, you've been on other podcasts. I'm sure you've talked about it. Like, what allowed you to get to that point of being able to be so open and honest and, obviously not care about the judgment that's going to potentially come from that? What brought you to that point? Because it's profound, and it's something that obviously should be replicated.
I don't know that I've ever thought about it till right now, but there's an answer, and it's cool. And sometimes I think I don't know how you are, but sometimes when we have trauma when we're growing up, like I would tell stories, with my husband, and I'd be laughing, like things we did, and he'd be like, honey, that's not funny. That's not
I
okay.
I make jokes about my dad's suicide all the time.
Yeah.
And like, it's so dark, and my wife, the first
Yeah.
time I made a joke about it, she did not understand my sarcasm at all, and she was like mortified. And then I
Yeah.
was like, I'm joking, right? Like, I'm joking. This is the part where you laugh, right? And like,
Yeah.
it's that is it very relatable of like, there's a deep, like, humor is a coping mechanism that is really profound.
Probably. Yeah.
And when you actually connect with it, like, it's mortifying to the people that are looking at what has happened to you, and looking at it seriously. But when you find the other person, like you and me could probably have some really fun, like, jokes about our trauma,
Yeah.
and we would enjoy it because we both kind of understand that we're both kind of coping in some way.
Yeah. So to your point of why I do it is because that's who I'm talking to. Like, it might sound really horrible. I don't care about the person who hasn't experienced the trauma
I,
as much.
yeah.
Like, if they don't get it, or if they don't understand me, or if they think, well, you shouldn't air your dirty laundry or whatever, like, that's fine. I'm speaking to the person who hasn't heard somebody talk about this stuff before
Right.
and come out of it. And I think the other piece is I've done the work of crying a lot and
Yeah.
being in these spaces and
You've
revisiting it. And sometimes, though I don't do this with clients, and I believe we don't have to, but I have relived it in my past. Like, I think because I've done that, like, I do think about it different. It doesn't have the same hold on me. I'm not being re-traumatized when I'm talking about it. And I think that too, to like show someone, like, you're not crazy and insane. I think people, when we talk about healing, and then we talk about this, like, we don't talk about the deep pains and the real crap that we've gone through, then I don't know that people think it's accessible. I know for me, I thought, oh, some people can heal if you've just had a little bit of stuff, but I did this, and I've
Mhm.
experienced this, and I don't hear people talking about that. So I don't know if that's available to me. So
Yeah.
I think that's the main reason that I share. And I don't know, like, I went to Toastmasters to learn to speak better. And I kind of was laughing at while I was talking. They're like, you need to pause, and like, you just said something really traumatic and sad. Like, take a minute and like bring people into it or whatever. So maybe someday I'll do that. But at the moment, this is what I've talked about it. So
Everybody has their own style. It's,
yeah.
sometimes you can bank on it and be successful with it. Honestly, like I love what you said, because the ability to just look to the people that need you and want you and are looking for you.
Yeah.
I think you should always speak to those people, and I think your ability to look beyond those people and say to the people behind them that have no experience in the matter but have everything to say about it, and say, I just don't care what you have to say right now. Like,
I mean,
I'm talking to these
it's
people.
still right. Like, it's still
It's
like hurts if somebody's criticizing or whatever. But yeah, my heart is like,
yeah,
and statistically, it's half of women, and it's
yeah,
like 30% of men. So there probably aren't many people who like aren't relating, right, in some
yeah.
way at the end of the day anyway.
That's potentially 80% of the population.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Fucking insane. Yeah.
well, I so many, like, I started doing mental health coaching, and I don't have the clinical qualifications that you do. I I was like, I'm going to start this,
Yeah.
purely based on people were asking for it, because I was like, I
Yeah.
was making content on TikTok, and I was, writing a book, and that was really the purpose. I was like, I'm going to share this book, and then people go to other people, right? Like, I didn't
Hmm.
think of people coming to me. And then people started asking me like, hey, do you do coaching? And I'm like, no. But then eventually it just kind of came that I did, and I started.
Yeah.
And the first thing I learned was the people that I thought would come to me did not come to me. I thought veterans would come to me, because I was like, I'm talking to veterans. I'm talking about my experiences. But the people that came to me were, more often than not, sexually traumatized women, who were in adulthood, and anywhere from, I've worked with women who are 20 years old to women who are 60 years old. I worked with men too, but like, women find me, and then we have conversations about sexual trauma,
Hmm.
because they've never been able to have that conversation before. And that, it's profound to realize that this person has lived
Yeah.
for 40, 50, 60
Yeah.
years and has never been able to have a space to
Yeah.
openly discuss this really traumatic event.
Yep.
And it's, to me, like, I feel that, right? Like even now, like, just thinking about some of my clients who've been through really hard things, like, I feel that. Like, I can't imagine being alone like that for that long.
Mhm.
I was alone from 6 to about 25. Um, and it was suicide, right? It was my internal thoughts, but it was never, I was never, um, put through this experience where I was like, I don't even know how to explain it, but like, your innocence is taken away, your ability to,
Yep.
um, you know, you know, withhold your sanctity as a human being was not taken away from you. That is a deeply profound, and traumatic scenario, and to be able to have a conversation about it is so incredibly hard, and to find people that are willing and able to openly have that conversation, and to help you openly have that conversation, is remarkably hard these days. And I think, we haven't really even touched like social media, but I feel like social media um, is both the giver and the taker in that situation, in which there's one side of social media that says you shouldn't talk about it at all, and you should, especially for men. Like, I see it so much with men, of like,
Yeah.
man up. You should definitely just not talk to, women are the problem. You should never talk to them, right? But you should never also talk about your trauma, and you should stop being a victim and all this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but then it's, at the same time, there's people like myself that try to step out on these platforms and talk about, these remarkably difficult experiences. Um, And so it's, it's the complexities of human life are always uh, very interesting to navigate. But I'm glad to see that you and I share a perspective that is very similar, right? Like I could give two shits about people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about, right? Like, and I say that
Well,
openly and honestly all the time.
yeah,
And I love people that are willing to look at those who need to hear what either I have to say or you have to say or someone
yeah,
has to say, and be willing to dismiss the criticism to speak to those people, right? I've been to, places where the first thing I say is like, hey, I'm not here to talk to everybody, right? I'm gonna have a
yeah,
conversation. I'm gonna have a discussion with all of you, but I'm not gonna reach all of you. I'm gonna reach somebody though. I know there's somebody in this room that needs
yeah,
to hear what I have to say. And almost every time I have someone come up to me and say, I was that guy. I
yeah,
needed to hear that. And it's profound, uh, it's profound work, and it's very purposeful work to sit there and listen to that person say, what you spoke about for 45 minutes has just changed my life.
yeah,
And some remarkable place to be.
yeah, yeah. That's your purpose, right? I also think it's my purpose. And I'm not the kind of person that's like, you're really strong. That's why you had lots of trauma. I think that's bullshit. And I think it's really harmful, to say that because it just sucks and it's not fair and it shouldn't have happened. But I think part of how I create meaning, from what I experienced is that it is part of who I am and then I can hold these spaces. So I have so much to say. I have so much to say about like everything you just said.
Yeah.
One though is there's a study by Harvard and they were like, okay, what are the most effective therapy methods? And they studied all these different therapists and stuff. And they found the only thing that determined if a person healed or not was trust.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're with these women or men or whoever, and they can trust you enough to talk about this and they'll heal. And I think that's really overlooked. And if you're a person listening to this podcast and you're looking for a therapist or you're looking for somebody to help you, like, and you don't trust them, it's okay to leave. It's okay to find somebody else.
And you
Because I
should.
think we can waste, and you should, because we waste time in those and we can bring shame. I have somebody I really love who had a lot of trauma and was in the military, and he went to this therapist and he said she looked at him like she didn't know what to do with him and he was crazy. And like if you
Yeah.
go to a professional and you get that reaction, first of all, go to another one who's better,
Right.
or go to Dylan or go to me. But like, like but
Go to you
that's
right now. I don't have, I'm not accepting anyone new right now.
oh, okay, whatever. But like trust isn't that nuts? It,
Yeah.
it was crazy to me. And also just made that so much more important, and to view it as sacred ground. The other thing is my brother took his life 17 years ago as well, and that's why I really connect with you. And he was in the military, and I worked in hospice. So I worked a few years with people who are dying. And so it just made death, it made it not taboo, but like, look at this thing that 100% of us are going to do. We're all going to die and we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I watched families not talk about it. Here they are, their loved one is like dying,
Yep.
and they don't talk about it because it's taboo.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is stupid.
Right.
And it's not resolving or healing. It's like, can we just talk about this big elephant in the room? So trauma is an elephant in the room, suicide's an elephant in the room, and death is an elephant in the room. Like, it's here, guys.
Yeah.
Here we are. Why don't we just like notice this thing that's all around us and like talk about it? And I
Right.
think there's a lot of different reasons. I think as society we've industrialized ourselves to treat ourselves like machines. And it's like, hey, like, we're humans and there's this stuff going on that like we need to talk about and we need to normalize it. It shouldn't be taboo to talk about death. I
Right.
mean, it's hard to talk about suicide. I don't ever think we're all going to be like, gee, this is great. But
Right.
it's so prevalent. Like, we should talk about this stuff. And I romanticize like indigenous cultures that would have like these ceremonies where they would like weep and grieve and shit. It's like, we are humans. We
Yeah.
have those things in us. And in America today, we have no place for them to go. And
Yep.
so they get stuffed and shoved until they're so overwhelming, people don't know what to do. So it's not serving us.
there's this cultural, I think there's a cultural revolution happening that is
Yeah.
relatively like it's noticed, but it's unnoticed. Like we look at it as social media, but the reality is a little bit different. I think the undertone is a lot different in terms of recognition of a couple things. I think trauma is number one. We recognize trauma more now than ever, right? Where there's there's an actual understanding that when you hurt people, um, like things actually happen to the human body that then need to be processed and understood. The
Mhm.
second thing is we're also recognizing the industrial complex of the United States and the world itself is very much focused to take from people and give to a select few, right? And whether you agree with that or not, it doesn't really matter. That's just kind of what happens, right? Is a lot of people get a little and a few people get a lot. And so there's this dynamic that people don't like that. Uh, and and there's a big conversation on
Crazy.
social media about that, right? The
Yeah.
conspiracy theory, there's a reason conspiracy theories exist, because they're like there's people out there that are trying to do bad things and control people and all this stuff. And whether that's true or not doesn't really matter, but I think it goes to show that this cultural revolution is this undertone of we don't want to be hurt anymore,
Yeah.
and we need more support and understanding and
Yeah.
appreciation for the work that we do. And i think I think culture is such an untapped, uh I what is that, a researchable kind of arena. Like I think we look at things from a micro perspective really well. Like
Yeah.
what's the best therapy, what's this, what's this, what's
Yes.
this. But when we really look at culture, like what are American traditions, what are how
Yeah.
are we building connection between all people, right? And not to say that we're doing it wrong, but you know
We're doing it wrong.
we
I'll
could
say that.
we could
Yeah.
certainly be doing it more right.
Yeah.
And
I think I love that because I think I'm a big picture thinker, and I study history. I love history because to me it's just psychology of the past. Like
yep.
that's like, it's what it is. So um there's a quote, I'm sure you know it, there's no measure of a man to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, right? And so we have this, we're soul sick. I mean, look around. So I think maybe everybody romanticizes the 50s and 60s. I don't think it was very romantic, but it was probably the peak of our economy for white cis, humans.
Yeah.
And so that is like glory days, just like if you have a stock, and it peaks, right? It's that was probably the peak of our civilization.
Yeah.
And again, you can argue with that, or read about it. And like, so we were at that place where a person could be quote unquote like part of the industrial complex because they were getting lunch breaks, they were getting amazing pensions, they were getting 35-hour work weeks and 3 weeks of vacation a year. So it worked for like that portion of the population to just go with the flow. But the flow became insane. The flow treats us as if we are machines who don't need rest and don't need appreciation and just can be worked harder for less money,
Mhm.
and financial insecurity is stressful, and it's a thing right now,
Yeah.
that's worse and worse every year. And so you can't just tell someone like go meditate if you don't look at them holistically, like their whole life and how everything's working. And it's a problem. And I don't think we're gonna I think healing individually is the answer. I mean, that's what I'm very passionate about. But as we do that, it's automatically going to change this sick system that we're part of that treats us like machines.
Yep.
And so then Harvard just came out with a study. They studied 274 men for 75 years. I wrote it down so I would get it right. For 75 years. And they found what they were looking for, like what made these guys happy. I thought there were women too, but it's just men. And community,
Mhm.
not finances, not social status, it was community. And I think we do totally suck at that
Yeah,
today.
very much.
And I think we need to. So what is community though? Community is you're valuable because you're here.
Yep.
And the industrial complex is you're valuable if you are contributing. So think about this. I'm a vet and I need something,
Mhm.
right? And if with an economy you're only valuable if you're giving,
Yep.
anytime we need, we automatically think we are less valuable or we are hurting something. In community, you're valuable because you're there.
Yep.
And if you need something, it's fine
Yep.
because you're part of the community. And I think that's what I see on social media changing. And Richard Rohr said the best criticism of the old is to make it obsolete. And I'm very idealistic that those ways of operating are going to be obsolete because people are just leaving. There's a great exodus from
Yep.
corporate and people are leaving and they're like, I'm going to live in my van or live in a house with 3 other families or live in my mom's basement because that sucks. And they're not lazy and they're not stupid.
Yeah.
They are no longer able to operate in this way that is very dehumanizing, that people criticizing them a few generations older did not actually live in, do
Yeah.
not actually know what it. I
Right.
feel very strongly about this, sorry, but like,
No, it's
and
it's
that all
good.
affects like how I feel today as I drive to work, right?
Right.
You can't separate those things.
Right.
But community is also, if I am thinking, if I have to process grief and somebody near me died, or I don't know how to handle something, I have somewhere to go with it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just keep talking, but there was another study, and I think they're all connected,
You go. You.
that they
I'm all for it.
they took, it was Sue Johnson. I don't know if you know Hold Me Tight, and she does
I don't remember. I don't know
she's
if I know.
a relationship therapist. She's
Okay.
amazing human. But they did a study where they had these people, I think they were like laying on a, like they were sitting in a chair or something, and they shocked them and they had them rate the pain. And so they gave them a shock a few times and they would rate it like 7, 8, 9, 10. Then they had them hold the hand of someone they loved, same shock, and they would rate it 4, 3, 2, 1, and sometimes even 0. And to me, that's the definition of community. I'm not going to take away the pain, but I'm going to hold somebody's hand figuratively,
Yeah.
or physically, like literally. And then we can do this crazy,
Yeah.
insane thing called life that we're all doing. And I think this conversation and conversation like that is part of it. It's saying, I'm available to hold your hands and
Mhm.
hear, what you have to say. And I can't take away the pain. I can't change the past. I can't change what happened to you, but I can hang out with you in it and it's okay. And I won't judge you. And that heals.
Yeah.
To me, that heals.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first things I talk to my clients about is I can be here for you consistently, but I can't be here for you constantly.
Yeah.
I will continually show up every time you schedule a session with me. I won't. I've canceled 2 sessions in like 3 years, and both of them were like a couple weeks ago when I ended up getting COVID like 2 days before, where I actually physically felt like death, and they were both like, "Yeah, we're canceling for you."
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can make it, but I'm not going to feel great. They were like, no. But like, and when I bring that up, because I'm a human being, you're a human being, we can only do what we can do. Like, we can only do for ourselves as much as we can do. But I can't sit in 20 people's lives constantly and trying to walk them through everything that they have to go through. And the responsibility of your life is yours. And you have to very much, like, one of the first things that I really try and deconstruct is any kind of perspective that says otherwise, of like, this person is supposed to do this for me. And the reality is, like, my mom is supposed to be this for me. Well, she wasn't.
Right.
And so we have to find a way to now construct a perspective that says, I am here for me.
Yeah.
And build that profound kind of verbal and mental language that says, I can support me. I can actually look at myself and say, I love me. I appreciate me. I value this about myself. And kind of dismantle those ideas that, um, first and foremost, I think kind of separate us from other people, because if we don't have that ability to look at ourselves and say, I appreciate me, we oftentimes latch on to people that are using us for purposes that are usually not good, right? And
Yeah.
and we don't know how to create boundaries. We don't know how to create healthy
Yeah.
relationships. And to kind of bring it full circle, there's this connection that is good. But then there's also this connection that is parasitic in ways,
Yeah.
that is, you can survive, but are you going to have a kick-ass life? Absolutely not. You are going to hate your life until your body says otherwise. And I think a great book is When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate.
Yeah.
And it explains it perfectly. The body will literally, when you are in bad relationships and bad
Yeah.
circumstances, it will literally kill you.
Yeah.
Whether by cancer, by autoimmune disorders, it will completely shut down your body step by step, in ways that you cannot even see or cannot even understand, because
Yeah.
you are undergoing constant stress because you don't know how to have a healthy relationship with self first.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, like, when we talk about community, there's a necessity for the person to be not just an individual, but an individual that is able to recognize themselves within the community. Not and I see this in the Christian church, uh, and I say that with a great sense of broadness, right, throughout America, that people fall in line with whatever their church says, and they become a voice for the church, but they don't actually recognize their own value within the church. And oftentimes I see religious trauma come from that,
Yeah.
and then
Absolutely.
to fall in with religious trauma, there's this things like how you perceive suicide, right? And when I was a kid, I was told
Yeah.
my father's suicide, he's going to hell because he
Yeah.
committed suicide, and that's that was something
That's traumatic.
I didn't
The
know how
whole,
to handle at 6 years old.
yeah,
But
it's
then
insane.
there's sexual trauma, and how is it, when it does come up and is when it's confronted, how is it handled in the church setting? Well,
Yeah. Horribly. As far as
oftentimes it's,
yeah.
don't talk about it
Yeah.
because you're gonna ruin the reputation of the family, right? I can't.
Man, mostly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. They say ruin the
Just
reputation of the
be
family, but it's
honest.
the
Yeah.
man, right? You're going to create drama, right? Like, there's so many times where community is valuable, but it's how you step into that community, how you create that community that
Yeah.
matters the most, right? Because we have the
Yeah.
United States is a community, but it's not, in many ways, it's not a healthy
Healthy.
community.
Yeah. There's one woman when I had our podcast that we interviewed, and she talked a lot about religious trauma and helping people overcome it and stuff in her own experience. And she said the church often uses community as a commodity,
Yep.
as a bargaining tool, right? And that
Yep.
is the definition. And you can have that in a abusive relationship, and you can have it in corporate too,
Yeah.
but I think the church, I think, is where a lot of broken, traumatized people, myself included, go to find answers, and then they just find more trauma.
Yeah.
And that was definitely my experience. So yeah, it's the idea of healthy community, and what the heck does that look like? And healthy community only comes from, I don't know if it's a good example, but I use it as like a cancer in your body, right? The reason people
Yeah.
die is because their immune system fights it,
Right.
right? And
I think it's
you're
personal.
fighting yourself, and that's why you die. And the way you heal from cancer, if people do heal from cancer or sickness, is by each cell becoming healthy
Yeah.
and not cancerous. So to me, my very idealistic view, each cell, each one of us individually becomes healthy. And to your point, like, I'm not here to save everybody. I think in the homeless shelter, I set
Yep.
out to save everyone, and I learned that I can't do that and it'll kill me.
Yeah.
So when I did, I brought a lot of boundaries and balance to the work I do now. And I'm like, I have assignments. I don't know, like, the people who come to me, that's my assignment. God can take care of the rest. Like,
Yeah.
But I think as a whole, that's what is happening. And the more each individual heals in their own life, they become a safe community to whoever they're talking to and whoever they're
Mm.
hanging out. And like that's how the organism, becomes healthy. But yes, we have unhealthy community where
Mhm.
you're only valuable if you're contributing, and you're, only valuable if you look good. I think that's the most damaging part of the church or different, relationships or organizations, is if you're shamed, if you don't look the part, if you don't act right, if
Yeah.
if you screw up. I mean, there's so much shame. It's insane,
Yeah.
right? And shame is the epitome of what I would say cancer, right? In an organism, it's going
Mhm.
to kill it. And yeah, so becoming healthy community. And I think it's good that you differentiated, because just because you are in proximity to 25 people does not mean there's any health whatsoever, and it may be killing you. And so the other piece to that is listening. We're not machines. I think we
Mhm.
have been programmed to ignore our bodies and ignore our emotions and ignore our grief and shove it down and keep going, right?
Culture.
And that will kill you. Like I was getting an ulcer and
Yep.
that kind of stuff when my kids hated my phone. I was killing relationships, like, and when I burned out and kind of had my wake up call, like. And so the opposite again is listening to myself. And I love your point. There's two pieces that need to happen. We have to acknowledge the pain. So I listened on one of your other podcasts, you're talking about like social media and bringing up Black Lives Matter and that kind of stuff. It's like, you have to have a moment where you fully take in the damage that has been done to you. I had to have that moment in my life where, okay, this sexual trauma has messed me up for years and hurt me, and I didn't deserve it. And it wasn't okay. And part of the therapy I do with people is fuck you therapy. So you have to, I think collectively, we have to have this big fuck you, and it has to be allowed.
Yeah.
And then you move forward fully. I'm fully responsible for me. Yes, that happened to me. Yes, it damaged my life. Yes, it hurt relationships and it screwed me over in a lot of ways. But from now on, my life is completely my responsibility. And it was, in my 20s, I was just had no idea, right? I was totally like oblivious and unknowing to all of these ways that it was affecting me. So it's like
Mhm.
we need to, part of healing is like acknowledging how sick you really are, really looking at it,
Yeah.
which is hard.
And you may not be able to do that alone.
I could not, 100%.
I couldn't.
Yeah. I had one. Yeah. I I wanted to share this, but I don't know if it is. Yeah, I needed people to help me and show me. I had one therapist and he's like, you need to go home and love your inner child. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I'm not going to go home and cry in a corner. So I never went back to him. But with, I bumped into that later with someone showing me like what the heck that meant.
Right.
That was a big, part of it. So we have these parts that are hurt. And if we don't go back and heal them, they are running the show. So collectively, you can have a bunch of 7-year-olds running around, right? And that's unhealthy community to me,
Yeah.
because we're all just a hot mess.
Yeah.
And then the healing is looking at that and addressing it and becoming empowered and saying, from now on, I get to decide how I'm gonna operate my life. That's empowerment to me.
Yeah. I see it as personal sovereignty,
Yeah.
right? It's where, to be, kind of going back to community there, um, to fully integrate yourself into a healthy community, I think you have to be able to look at yourself as a sovereign entity within it. And I look at it as, think of it as a Congress, right? Um, they're not all the same, right? And they're all people that are trying to express their opinion, their thoughts, their feelings, their ideas. Um, but they're not people that look at each other and say, I'm going to follow this person blindly. They're people that discuss things openly and honestly, right? Or that's the idea behind a
Ideal.
Congress, right?
And no
Um,
corporation is fun. No, I'm
exactly,
just kidding.
right. Like we're not looking at American Congress. We're looking at the ideal version of Congress. So like when you come into a community, the idea would be is if you want to create a healthy one, you have to be able to understand that your ideas are yours and
Yeah.
and you can change them, right? If you come into that community and say, I'm going to follow this community blindly, then your values are going to probably be at ends with that, right? Because then you're going to look at, well, what is loyalty? This is one of the first questions I usually ask my clients. What is loyalty, right? And the answer is usually, I don't know, right? Because they've watched me and listened to me long enough to be like, that's a trick question, Dylan. And I know
Yeah.
you're trying to trap me here. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm just trying to get an answer, right? But what is loyalty? And they're like, I have no idea how to define it. I just know that when I look at my family, I know I'm supposed to, do what is best for the family. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, are you supposed to not talk about your trauma because it bothers them? Are you not supposed to say that you've been traumatized by someone in your family because it causes drama, right? Like, these things seem to be not good for the family, but they're way worse for you than the family. And like that, and then we start questioning, what is the value of loyalty? Well, the value of loyalty is not about a person, place, or a thing. It's about an idea, right? Well, family, the idea of a family would be to protect and support each other. And if you, as a family, say, don't talk about sexual trauma because this person might have a bad reputation now, you're protecting one, but you're not protecting the other. You're
Mhm.
supporting one, but you're not supporting the other. And so the idea would be is
Yeah.
that value is that the value of loyalty has now been null and void in the family. And you should very much change how you feel about loyalty from that point on. The value of loyalty should be to your ideals, your values, your, what you feel is right and wrong, your integrity,
Yeah.
rather than to, oh, my mom says, don't tell anybody about my sexual trauma from my stepdad because it might hurt his reputation and it'll change the family dynamics. Like, no, like, well, now your mother is not protecting you and not supporting you, and now that's going to cause, immeasurable damage because she's not going to protect you and she's not going to support you for
Yeah.
however long it takes you to be able to now take your personal sovereignty and say, I don't agree with this, and
And
that,
that's your, I think that's the micro of what's happening on the macro is we've been protecting the family, quote unquote, the dysfunctional family of America, but not saying these injustices that have happened. And now people are gaining freedom and
yeah,
sovereignty, whether, social media or whatever, and they're speaking out and everybody's like, oh,
yeah,
right. But it's the best, most healthy thing because when we bring those things to the surface, when they come to the surface, that's how they heal. And yeah, it's messy and loud and you don't actually know what to do with it, but like that's how things feel. So, it's the difference between operating from subconscious programming that was, happened when you were a child and operating out of that victim mode and out of that child mode where other people actually do have sovereignty over you because you're being parented, right?
yeah,
And growing up, right? So the idea of arrested development means there's some part of you stuck in the past that needs healing. And so when stuff is coming up or you're feeling triggered or you're having a panic attack or you're having flashbacks, that's your body like going, hey, let's address this so you can heal and grow up. And then when we're grown-ups in the room, I get to I get to operate in my sovereignty. I mean, I think it's
mm-hmm,
maybe ideal, but I really see that, like I see us going there. And then when we're all grown-ups, we can say like, no, this isn't right. This conversation is really hard, but
yeah,
we need to have it. When we're a kid, that conversation is impossible to have. When we're operating out of subconscious beliefs from when we were little, that conversation couldn't be had because someone else had sovereignty over you. You were victimized, right? And they
mm-hmm,
could hurt you, put you in a different room, or take away the care, right? You were relying on them for your food and shelter and clothing and love. And so
yeah,
that was a real thing, right? So again, acknowledging what really happened when you were younger and then having a moment where we put the past in the past, like that's the work that I do with clients. And then you get to operate as an adult today and you say hard things, you speak up, you tell the truth, you listen to your body when your body's yelling at you and going, hey, no, this isn't fair, right? People are like, oh, we shouldn't be angry. Yeah, anger is fabulous because it tells you when things need to shift or change and they're not there.
yeah,
And, So yeah, if we can do that on the micro level that you just explained, then we can have the capacity to do it. Because I think when we've done it ourselves and said the things that we need to say and allowed ourselves to be angry, then we can allow other people to be angry, right? Whatever we can't handle
Mhm.
is because there's some part of us that's not allowing it. Like we
Right.
should be able to, I think, collectively allow the people of color in our country to say and do whatever they need to do to be heard and seen and heal. And, you know, that would include speaking the things that happened. And the reason we're not comfortable with it is because we haven't addressed it in ourselves. I participated in that. I participate in a system like that did that, right? They're like, "Oh, I didn't do it today." And it's like, it doesn't matter. This is a person
Yeah.
that needs to be seen and heard and understood. And because I've done it in myself and I get it, I can hear it in somebody else without being threatened.
Yeah.
So is it,
And that's that's where I go back to culture, right? And just how profoundly misunderstood I think it is, and how much we really need to look deeper into how are we projecting into the future what what is right and wrong, and how are we developing that, how are we carrying forward, what kind of traditions are we carrying forward that actually build healthy community and support connection between our fellow man. And I look a lot at what my clients are obviously struggling with, and religion is one of them. I've never been one to follow religion. I would consider myself more atheist than anything, but I don't really care to define myself as much. Um, but religion is really profound. I think not necessarily religion, but actual faith is the more pertinent value there. Religion is more or less, I think, conducted for control in some way, of like, you should follow this, and this will get you here, and people subscribe to that. But faith is something different, and I think it's something that we should try to manage or create some form of tradition or cultural representation of that matters, right? Because faith
yeah,
is so profound. It is, you can have faith in self, you can have faith in God, you can have faith in multiple gods, right? Like, but the reality is you should create faith as a human being within your personal sovereignty, to recognize this is what I know will get me where I'm going, right? Some people, in 2010, people were like, I have faith in the hustle mindset, and I'm gonna do it. That hustling is gonna get me where I'm going. A lot of people did. Um, because faith can push boundaries that we didn't think we could break. Technology. People have created such a profound faith in technology that we even have, Chat GBT, which is changing the world in terms of how we
yeah,
have, you know,
super fast.
right? Like AI is literally going to learn how to work with us better than we can work with us. That's really interesting. And people have a lot of faith in it. Is that right or wrong? I don't know, right? But the idea is, when we develop faith, that does not uh, that does not necessarily mean we can't have critical thinking. And that's where I struggle with religion versus faith, is that when you have religion, more often than not, critical thinking, uh, this is why we have the science versus, you know,
Right, right.
the science versus God conversations, because
Yeah,
critical thinking uh, contradicts what God says, and
right.
we can't have a conversation about it. Um, when the reality should be is, we should be able to develop faith on both sides and be able to openly discuss and recognize the differences between them.
Yeah,
Like, science is continuously updating itself, whereas religion has been a formation of the past. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. It's just something that we can have faith in a God that's 2,000 years old. that we created, whether it was real or not. I don't know. Like, I don't know or have the answers, nor do I care if other people choose that or not. Right? I have no judgment of someone that chooses to believe in God or not, because quite frankly, it's not my fucking business. Right?
So
My business is to understand my own personal sovereignty and have faith in what I deem is good for me, and in the integrity to support healthy communication and healthy connection.
yeah, I also have a lot to say about
Go for
this.
it.
Like yeah, I would consider myself, religiously traumatized for sure because I believed it. And if you believe it, like if you believe 90% of people are going to hell, like it's very traumatizing, or suicides go to hell, or
Mm-hmm.
teenage moms go to hell, or whatever, like I
Yeah.
at one point was like, I gave up on the idea, of that being who God was, when I was like, okay, so there's a smoking section and a non-smoking section. Like, how petty and horrible is this God? Like, who are we serving with a
Right.
90% fail rate? Like, who are we serving?
This is
I've
smoking
so
section.
many things. So there's a guy, David Hawkins, and he has a book called Power versus Force, and he has a book called Letting Go. And he describes this levels of consciousness. So he studied a lot of people for many years and their quality of life. And so at the bottom was like shame and guilt and despair. And he found those people more likely to have severe health issues and
Mm-hmm.
take their lives and stuff. And then people that had joy, and then a few blissed out, months, whatever. And so he found their quality of life throughout their lifetimes, and then it directly correlated to their view of God. So the least healed and the most hurting people viewed God in that same way.
Hmm.
And then the people who healed more, their view of God changed, whatever that is. And I find that is the same.
Yeah.
And so the church attracts traumatized people who view God as very judgmental and mean and cruel, and you're in or you're out, probably like their dads, probably like their moms, right? And that was the case with me.
Yeah.
And so it's familiar. If you grew up with trauma, a
Right.
traumatic God is familiar. That was very familiar to me, to be like, you're in
How
or you're out. If you
interesting.
don't do what I want, you're done. And as I've healed, God's gotten more loving and become way more open-minded, and all these different places, and loves all these different people that I didn't know could love. And the other piece is,
It's a
so it's a
really
really,
interesting thought.
yeah,
I just need to say that before you go on.
yeah, yeah. Highly recommend David
Yeah.
Hawkins' books. But I find that true, that as people heal, they either go to more healed churches or spaces, or for me, leave. And it was never my intention,
Mm-hmm.
but I found myself over and over. And so you said you can't question. So the only place you are not allowed to question things is toxic relationships. Okay. That's the only place. A
Facts.
healthy relationship, you can question all the things.
Yep.
That's called the conversation. That's called communication. And Copernicus is the one who discovered the earth revolved around the sun, because the church said everything revolves around the earth. That's how God made it. That's what the church
Right.
said. So this scientist looking up at the stars, noticing things, was like, oh, hey guys, the earth actually revolves around the sun. And he produced it. He didn't publish it till his deathbed, because the church, who knows God, would have killed the guy who figured out how God made the universe, right? To me,
Yep.
that's everything. That describes everything about religion to me.
Right.
Like, you tell the truth, they're probably going to kill you. And it is damaging, though, when I'm hurting and I go into a building and I'm trying to find love, and all I find is more shame. So I work with a lot of people. I never intended to, because I like left the church and I was like, cool, never going to talk about that again. Well,
Right.
apparently that's
Wrong.
not the agenda, because it's a huge cultural thing.
Yep.
And I think it's being dismantled, just like everything else, because
Mhm.
it should, because it
Yep.
has been, Rome owned it. Like, we can't look at this stuff and romanticize it and say
Yeah.
it's beautiful. We have to look at the dark side of it. We have to look at the jacked up parts of it, just like we have to look at our family and go, hey, Uncle John's been molesting people, guys. We got to say that out loud.
Right.
There has to be a place to just call a spade, and there's a ton of people walking in the doors looking
Mhm.
for healing, walking out with more shame, or at least no healing. And
Yeah.
that's a problem. If you're going
Yeah.
to call yourself a house of God, that's a very big problem.
I
So
I find it remarkably ironic that um, a majority of people that come to me are come from typically religious. Some of them I've had cult people from cults, like come from
Sure.
cults.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, quite a lot of them, um, or people come from the Christian faith,
Yeah.
and find this like complete insecurity in how to actually recognize God.
Yes.
And I find it ironic in some ways. And I
That
talk to
you, as
my
an atheist, are bringing
right,
people to God. So
like
for me, like Garamate says, what is trauma? It's experiencing pain alone, feeling separated. It's the actual, like the worst thing they ever used to do with people out of the community was shun them. That's the
yep,
worst that could happen to you, right? Because it's the worst human experience is rejection and being shunned.
yep,
And so we're in this pain alone. So all healing is reconnecting. And when I work with clients, it might be God or the universe or themselves or their grandma, like I don't care and it doesn't matter. You're reconnected to this idea that you're not alone, right? To your point, I don't know exactly if I would say that's faith or whatever, but to me, that's all healing is. Like when your arm breaks, they stick it in a cast, your bones go back together. So it's a
mhm,
fucking miracle. I don't know what happens. It's a miracle, but we all do it.
yep,
And to me, it's the same. You hold space for this woman to come into your office. A miracle happens. She's put back together on some level. I
mhm.
don't think we need to actually know what that is.
I love it. I'm I don't question a lot of like why what I do works. I try not to. Like some things I question. I'm like I ask my clients like what is it that I do that helps you? And so much of it tends to be my personality,
Yeah.
that I find remarkable, you know, and because a lot of my personality has really been built in the last five to 10 years. Because I didn't have much of a personality that was openly expressed and able to breathe free air.
I was going to
Uh,
say, I would argue it just wasn't free. It's always been there.
right.
Yeah.
So I look at that in some ways of like it it was there, but it wasn't to me. Like it
Yeah.
just wasn't something that I allowed to see the world. And even in my alone times, I didn't allow it to see the
Yeah.
world because I was afraid of it. And so, you know, so much of it was built so recently that it's new to me to recognize my own honesty. And I don't know if you've listened to some of the more recent episodes of the podcast of me talking about like I don't even know if I've published them yet, but me talking about uh, like me on this podcast. Like this podcast is in some way a therapy for me. It's my
Yeah.
ability to, you know, I get to isolate a human being for an hour, 2 hours, and I get to openly talk about myself, openly talk about other people, you know, ask them questions, learn, right? I get to learn so much from the people that I talk to, but I get the opportunity to express myself. And I've cried on this podcast multiple times. You know, I've laughed, I've cried, I've been sad, I've been happy, I've been empathetic, I've even been angry, right? Like I didn't think that would happen, but it did. Um, but not for long. Um, but it's, you know, it's something that this has been something that has allowed me to become more me and find more of myself. And I think people need that. You know, I'm not saying everybody should start a podcast, but you should you should find people that help you open up the person that is you. And when you find those people, you should sanctify that relationship, by, you know, and this is a thought that I've been having recently. Is one of the quotes that I keep seeing is your feelings are not my problem. They're not my responsibility. And I both agree and disagree on that, because when you sanctify a relationship, and this is why I think it matters, when you say your feelings are not my responsibility, that is completely wrong in a relationship. Because in this relationship, your feelings in some ways are my responsibility, because I want to make you happy. I want you to enjoy yourself. But at the same time, if you don't care for my feelings, well, then why should I care for yours? And so there is a negotiable relationship that we have
Yep.
to craft in terms of what my responsibility is in terms of
Yep.
your feelings versus your responsibility for my feelings. And that's where I think like this quote can be in some ways toxic, because initially it was something that I saw quoted for people leaving narcissistic relationships, which it fits so remarkably well, right? A narcissist feelings and emotions are not your responsibility if they are actually harming you, right? But like in a healthy relationship, that's where that needs to completely shift, because we need to be able to be responsible for each other's feelings and say, you know what, I did make a mistake and I know I hurt you and I need to take responsibility for that. I need to take ownership of that.
Yeah.
And how do you want me to do that? Because I
Yeah.
feel something for that, right?
I
And that needs to be negotiated.
I think it's a spectrum. You can be under responsible,
Yep.
responsible, and over responsible, right? Over responsible is I need to make you happy. Responsible is I want to be in relationship with you and I care about you. Under responsible is I don't give a fuck if I hurt you.
Right.
So you need to find yourself on that place, because you also have all these people being mean and cruel
Mm-hmm.
on social media, right? That's the bad part of it. And being like, if you care, you're a snowflake, and you're whatever snowflakes, and you're so dumb. And it's like, no, you're just an asshole. And if you're getting some feedback about that, it makes sense,
Yeah.
because you're being under responsible for your words and your actions, because
Yep.
they do have repercussions.
Yep.
Right. But the person who's like just scared what everybody thinks and they want to make, I used to call people after church. We had this like little Sunday school thing. It was awesome because it was talking about trauma and kids. But we would have group discussion. And then after a few hours or the next day, I would be beating myself up like, oh my God, I said that and I never should have said that. And I probably hurt their feelings, and call people and be like, I'm so sorry. And they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, that's over responsible. Like,
Yep.
that's, neurotic. But there's a healthy responsibility. Again, I believe the healthy responsible is me being an autonomous adult.
Mm-hmm.
Over or under is kid, because you've got parent and kid, right?
Yep.
Parent allowed to impose whatever they want, kid feeling responsible to make the parent happy, right? So I think that's a good definition of like where you fall. And we have all of these people saying, well, things should go this way and you should just do it this way. And and then the people like a narcissist or whatever,
Yeah.
also arrested development of hurting little kid there that hasn't been addressed.
Yep.
And then the person trying to make him happy, would say the empath or the codependent, on both sides, of hurting little kid that needing to make somebody happy, right? Like, you address both, you get to the middle of, I say, grown ass adults, like just talking to each other. And then I can say something that you might not like,
Yep.
and we can either have a conversation about it, or we go, well, maybe this isn't going to be a good relationship because we just don't agree on this, but we own it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like it'd probably be hard to find something we disagree on, but if we did, it'd be a fun conversation to have.
Well, so far, like I was not, it's so funny. The religious stuff has been coming up with clients.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, like, I just thought, well, I'm not going to talk about God. And like the fact that you're like the Christian church, I'm like, okay, here we go. But yeah, it's, and when we can be able to pay attention to ourselves, like you're saying, what our body is saying, and when things are coming up, I think if you pay attention, like every time I go to church, I feel like shit. Well, let's, maybe there's a reason for that.
Right.
Instead of going, well, I need to forgive. Well, maybe you need to stop getting hurt every Sunday.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, it's an evaluation. Typically, I start with an evaluation of words. What are the words that make you feel things? And I don't intend on trying to dismantle the Christian church, right? Like
exactly.
that's
like
not,
that was not.
That's not
if I had
what
it
I
my
want to
way,
do.
Dylan, I used to have traps. I would pull over on the side of the road and give people traps. Like, I wanted everybody to go to heaven, which I think is, I still do. I just think heaven's a little different now.
Yep.
But like, it was the same intention, but yeah, it wasn't, it was funny because it was like, the more you heal, you bump up against these things and you're like, I don't want to have to call out Uncle Joe who's been abusing people, but now I have. to,
But
because
Uncle
that's
Joe's
like the responsible
Uncle
thing to
Joe's being
do.
a fucktard, and I can't
You
allow
can't
that
be
to just be
quiet anymore.
right.
Yeah.
I never intended, right, to have conversations about the Christian church or anything like that, because I grew up there. I never really had any issues with it, specifically outside of that one time where someone said to me, "Your father's going to hell because he's
Oh,
committed suicide."
yeah.
Because I went to church following that to I think it was Presbyterian. I was Lutheran first and then Presbyterian, but I just never cared, right? Like I was a kid, I was traumatized. I didn't give a shit. Uh, I kind of hated everything and hated people, so I just didn't want to be around people.
Yeah.
So I never had bad experiences. Um, and even now, like I don't I don't care whether like I would love if you love God and you love religion, go for it. I love that. But if you hurt people and you claim that uh, your God says it's okay to hurt people, we have a fucking problem, right? And I'm not going to sit here and just be quiet about that. And if you have an issue with that and you think I'm a heathen, that's fine. But I'm going to bring some pretty
Yeah.
hard to argue with
Well,
logic to that.
then
And
I'll bring, for me, it's Bible verses. Like Jesus went in and whipped people and said, "You're a
yeah,
brood of vipers and your whitewashed tombs." Like the only people he yelled at were asshole churchy people.
yeah,
And then there's this, there's the verse that says you'll know a tree by its fruit. You go in and you get treated like crap, or people are condescending and rude on Facebook. That's shitty fruit. You
mhm,
don't have to be real smart to figure out that's not good, you know? But I think it's a system that's been allowed to exist because it was part of the founding of the country, and the,
yeah,
the patriarchy and the, colonization and, all that stuff that we're kind of learning about now. And, you can say whatever you want about that stuff. Again, it's like if you read any history, you're going to find this stuff,
yeah,
and it's just coming up. It's not coming up to threaten anything except to set it straight and make it healthy. And if that threatens something, it needs to go. If being healthy and being honest and treating people with love and respect is a threat, we don't want that system, right? Like if being honest and asking questions is a threat, like
yeah,
that's a problem. And
absolutely.
yeah, it needs to be addressed. So Martin Luther, guy who started the Lutheran Church,
Yep.
didn't believe suicides went to hell, but he didn't preach it because he thought everyone would take their lives. So he preached suicides go to hell because he didn't want all of the poor people to go do it as a viable option to get to heaven faster. So again, that's straight up church history if you do any research
Thanks,
and
Martin.
read, right? But I get it. Like, who wants to be that preacher that's like, yeah, suicide straight to heaven? Like, I could see how that might not help you sleep at night, but the damage, people not being buried in cemeteries, oh my God, the
Yeah,
shame around that, like
right.
totally insane, totally awful. And then so healing, I work with people who've had abortions or who've had a family member commit suicide. And then healing is like having the real God, in my opinion, which is love, just love, God is love, come in and just comfort and love and take away all the shame with that stuff and help people understand that, how their loved one feels, or hear them say, "I love you, I'm proud of you," or "It's okay," or whatever, like to me, that's religion. like,
Yeah.
like, and healing and stuff. So yeah, I love that. So I'm so curious, like if you're an atheist, like what does faith mean to you? I want to ask you a question on your podcast. Like, how does that compute?
I love
I
it
know you
when
said like faith in stuff, but like, yeah,
so to me,
because you seem to me as a very, like, I wouldn't say, maybe I might say spiritual, even as an atheist, like you're standing on something, right? You're not cynical
no.
necessarily, right? Yeah.
I mean,
So
I'm a realist.
yeah.
I've been to war, right? And so I've seen the worst that
And I
mankind
think
can
that's
do.
the other thing that religion does. It does not handle that, right? You
No.
get platitudes and you get weird, like I would ask questions, and like people don't even have any answers.
Right. Like, war is interesting because we both fight thinking that God is on our side,
Yeah.
right? And if
Yeah.
you believe in that, right? But I went to war without God, and I never needed it, right? People would have prayers before missions, and I didn't give a shit. Right? It didn't affect me. Um, my faith, my faith is, I think, altogether more natural in what is, right. I don't and
Yeah.
I feel like there will be people out there that might look at this and say, well, you believe in God in some ways, but yes and no, I just believe it differently. um the world, the mother nature, right, and not to put a person or make a personification here, but the world is what I have faith in. I have faith in the reality of life and the necessity for uh, living and surviving, and you know the the ability to create a life for yourself, right? Like I have a faith in, and most of my faith is in myself, right? I look at myself because I never had faith in myself before 2020 or 2015. um, I see me as being the person that I need to have the most faith in, because this vessel of my body is only going to
Yeah.
get me as far as I'm willing to have faith in it. And so a lot of my faith is both internal, of who I am, what are my values. I'm very strong in how I understand and view and define my values, but then also perspective matters, because I'm able to look at nature, right? The food chain in some ways, the reality of things like war and violence and peace and love, and recognize that it is a massive, confusing mess. That when you recognize faith in it, I think you actually understand it more. That you you recognize that both sides in Afghanistan, the U.S. and the Taliban, were fighting a good fight. We both thought we were right. Now, I personally, in my opinion, I think we were more right in some ways, but we weren't all right, right? We weren't putting women and children and men in Connex containers and leaving them in 100-degree heat for a couple of days before they died. We weren't doing that, but we weren't perfect, right? And so, like, there's this consciousness of recognizing that I'm looking for a net positive, and my faith is in myself, in the world, and trying to create that and leave that mark and that legacy. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't think one entity created all that we have here. I don't think that's possible. I don't believe in it. I think we are a um, we are a product of a lot of remarkable coincidences and consequences of things that we cannot completely understand. And I have faith in that, and I understand that I have no idea if I'm right or wrong, and I'm okay with that. That's my faith.
I love that. And
And
I
I
love it because I think that anybody's like, this is God. This is what he thinks. Like,
That's
so how's he
easy.
God? Like, how's he God? You,
That's
Mr. Human, hasn't figured out like how. And I love, so just, I don't know if you study the Bible a lot, but Jehovah Jireh is one of the names of God, and it means breast. And I just love it so much. Because everybody's like, it's this veil, which is, a lot from the Roman, culture and everything. But like,
yeah.
to me, to be in awe of something, right, means I don't get it. And that's how, like, I feel about it when our arm breaks and goes back together, and when our emotions heal
Mhm.
because we cried and went to a younger version of us in our imagination and our subconscious and gave them a hug, and years of trauma melt away. Like, to me, this is all miraculous. And I think that definition of faith is lovely, because if I have it all figured out and I know what this male God thinks, does, and how he judges the whole world, there's zero faith required in that. I have no faith. I've got rules,
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. And it leaves you curious, which, curiosity is
Mm-hmm.
a much higher, level of operating in the world
Yep.
that than assuming, which is kind of what you're doing,
Yeah.
otherwise.
When you when your perspective makes things easy, I think you failed yourself.
Well, and I think, again, why I share these things, why you share this podcast, is because we're speaking to people who haven't been able to reconcile it. You cannot reconcile war and a loving God
Yeah.
just in 10 minutes. That takes years of
Years.
soul searching
Yeah.
to figure out, why did God take my brother at 22 that I prayed for every day for 5 years? Why was my dad abusive? And you hear of these other people, and it's like, I was going to take my life, like you, for instance, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. And I'm like, fuck you, because my brother did take his life.
And I
Why
laugh
did why
because
did God save, you and not my brother, right?
right.
We have to have those conversations. We have to sit with that. Why do some people become addicts? Like my dad died alone in his basement, never said sorry. He had 7 kids. Like, why? Like, there
Yeah.
has to be space for all that. And I think with the true God that I believe in, whatever you would call it, to me it's love, can handle all that
Yeah.
without a problem. No worries, no judgment. Like, sweetie, you can bring all that to me. I can handle it, and that is not represented in the church. I cannot say these things in the church. I cannot
Yeah.
share vulnerabilities in the church. They're
Right.
very different organizations and
Right.
organisms, like
Yeah.
very different entities. So, and I think speaking that gives people freedom when they're stuck in it. They're feeling terrible, they're hurting, and then they're thinking it must be me,
Yeah.
because the organ, the organization can't be wrong because it's God. Like, who am I to argue with God? Well, honey, you're not arguing with God.
Yeah.
You're arguing, like,
You're arguing with a human that has a
yeah.
representation that conflicts with what your thoughts are.
And to your point, when you listen, our bodies, which, I do believe are, we're created, but whatever, are these amazing, they're like these amazing, like, vehicles that do drive us to our purpose
Yeah.
when we're listening and when we're paying attention, and they're yelling at us when something needs attention, that we need to heal. Like, it's amazing.
Yep. I I agree. I mean, it's when you really look at the human body, there's such a requirement for human connection.
Yeah.
And I think the initial surge of social media kind of represented you should be an individual. You should go develop yourself and go be this, hero, right? And I don't disagree, but again, I can't fully agree with that because we need to be able to craft connection with other people. We need
Yeah,
to because the
we
body
have
needs
to.
it. The body has a requirement for another person to be with you and be around you, and not just one, maybe more, right? I don't think it has to be just one. Um, and I've recently had the incredible experience of having a child enter our lives, and I mean the the look on her face, right, every morning when she sees me is is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, right? Like if I could give two shits about God, but I care about that child, right?
Yeah.
That's my that's my beauty, right? I see that and there's a feeling that had never existed in me before that child came into this world, and there's a representation of joy and happiness and love and respect and value that comes from seeing that, right? And you know, me and my wife had difficulties. We lost three to get one, and that's incredibly hard. Um, and there's something within that struggle that shows just how valuable connection becomes after, right? Because life, I think, is not meant to be easy. It's not meant to be simple or comfortable or any kind of thing that is joyous. I think It's not there's no intention of that. I don't think there is. You have to build it. You have to fashion it. You have to craft it. You have to develop it. And if you don't, you will die unhappy because there's no intention of happiness. You have to be able to develop a perspective that looks at both death and life equally, but understand that you have life left, and you should learn how to enjoy that despite, right? This is why my book is called Defy the Darkness, because I don't think life is light. It's full of light. I think it's full of darkness. And if you want to be happy, if you want to enjoy life, you have to be able to be the light in the darkness and be able to defy it and be able to defend the sanctity of who you are and your joy and your peace and your love. And I think human beings can develop that faith in themselves to do so.
Yeah.
But it's a fucking hard journey, and you have to want it.
Yeah. And to me, my only difference of words would be you cleared shit out to make room for it
Mm-hmm.
so that you can hold it in you, right? Hold light in you,
Yeah.
and Christian need why you're coming into agreement with the things, that God says about you that most Christians really, really don't, that you're loved and worthy and an amazing human and capable and valuable, right? Like you're making room for that so that you can hold it. And the only way we can is to have the capacity to hold the darkness. Like if you have no ability to look at, right, Young called the shadow, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
can't look at the selfish, arrogant, hurting, desperate, weak parts of you, then you won't have the ability to hold the light too. Like when they talk about duality, like you have to be able to
Yep.
hold both. So scientifically too, yours is much more a beautiful way of putting it, but like scientifically, they've they've done studies like if we don't experience pain, then we literally don't have the joy hormones go off in our bodies. And so part of the reason like people are cutting and depressed and miserable right now is because we've actually made life a little too easy and we avoid pain and we avoid struggle. And so people kind of feel numb.
Yeah.
And so they've also lost joy. Like your capacity to handle pain there's an exact correlation with your capacity to handle joy. And we've lost some of that. And so I think we're like, I'm talking about how, awesome community is like, I don't know what it looks like. I don't know, part of me is like, do we go live in the woods and chop wood and carry water and like have,
I think some people
physical
can,
hardship?
right? I think
Like, I
community
don't
is
know what it
is
looks like.
very diverse, right? I because
Yeah.
because I'm a gamer, right? And that's something I don't actually talk about. This is actually probably the first time I've actually talked about gaming on my podcast or in terms of anything. There's a gaming community,
Yeah. I see
right?
that. Like I met a woman and she met her husband that way. And it seems
Yeah.
very legit, right? Yeah.
It's wherever people come together, and I've always wanted to do this, and I think I will at some point, um, to just start something that's like, let's let's go to breakfast once a month and just have the conversation of how are you actually doing,
Yeah.
and
Have
break
space.
break bread
Yeah.
together. It's that could be a community. It's like once a month
It
could be a
could.
community. It's
Yeah.
like I have a couple 100,000 people following me on TikTok, but I have a text community. I'm looking at it right now of almost 1,500 people that get a text from me every single day. And there's I'm having camera issues right now, but um, there's there's this profound appreciation for it, right? Like I just send a
Yeah.
text every day. To me, at times it's like mundane and annoying, and I forget to realize what it's actually doing until I go back in. I schedule my text for the day, and then I do my business, and then I come back and I see the responses at night, and I don't even realize sometimes that 1,500 people are looking at these texts, and I don't realize how much those people need it at times. And
Mhm.
that's community. right?
Yeah.
And it's something that like when when one person is looking for just someone to message them, and I'm that person, and I don't know them, that's like I want to know those people. I want to learn who those people are because it's like it's something that's so profound. I don't even realize it. And I'm like almost I'm almost not even recognizing how important I am in all of this.
Yeah.
And it's emotional for me because it's like that's what I set out to do and I sometimes forget that.
Yeah.
And like that is community. It's me recognizing my importance and other people allowing me to be important.
Yeah.
Like that shame of being useless doesn't exist there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
And
profound.
the idea of like shining your light right out of you has to believe it's actually doing something, right? So you are, and it is, and it's awesome, and I love it. Yeah,
I
it's good. And
I
the yeah, I find community in business in a couple business groups that I'm part of, and they have so meetings on Tuesday or Fridays, everybody celebrates their wins,
yeah,
and one of them, another one, I'm not part of this, but it's Polka Dot Powerhouse is a women's networking group. It's
sure.
kind of a dorky name, but it's a really good community. But in Madison, every Friday morning they just meet and they talk. And the woman was saying, again, I'm not a part of it, but she's like, sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry, sometimes people are just sharing what's going on in their lives. Like that's community. It's just space, and there's no agenda, and you don't need to contribute. You just have a space, which is like literally time,
Yeah,
effort, and energy. Yeah, I love that. And I do think for a lot of people it is mine.
yeah. We need more of it.
Yeah,
I like social media. I don't love it. I can't say that, but I think when used correctly, it's a tool. I think when used incorrectly, it can be a cancer. Um, I think social media can be a powerful community. It can be a place where people connect and interact uh, and learn. Right. I think TikTok's an interesting case study for the next 20, 30 years, if not more, to understand what kind of culture develops because of an app on a phone. Right? Like I think it's just like we are going to be looking at the after effects of TikTok for the next couple decades. um but people, i can just I can just understand what my content has given to people, but there's so many content creators out there. People have learned about suicide from me. They've learned about what it is, how it affects people, how to work through it, how to face it, how to talk about it. People learn about trauma, right? People learn about sexual trauma, right? Um, and how to work through it, understand it, talk about it. These are, you would think that these are things that parents would help with, but not all parents are equipped with that knowledge or that ability, or sometimes the parents are the problem. And so like social media has created a way to connect with a person in need, in trouble, in actively in struggle, during a faster than anything else has ever existed on the planet. And and it's a way of isolating it, right? Where someone who can never tell anybody they know who I am and still receive my texts and my TikToks and be helped and be supported through that process.
yeah,
And that I think is probably one of the most profound things, because before it was books, it was TV, YouTube kind of came out,
right.
and now social media has become more powerful. Um, but now it can literally be a tool in which I can be represented in your life as a person that is supportive every day. And that's what can help people get through. I've had people contact me and be like, Dylan, I watch your videos every day. I get your texts every day. And in the past year, what you have done for me is bring me out of one of the darkest holes. And I have found my perspective to be completely changed. I've worked through so much, and it was you just being there every day. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, but I'm honored, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
power. And I wish it's hard because like I have almost 600,000 followers, but I don't know 600,000 people, and that's the hard part is like, I would love to have the time and opportunity to understand and learn more about every single one of them, but I can't. And I think that's where, there's not a ton of empathy for content creators. There's this expectation of like, create more content, be you. But on the same token, it's really hard to be a content creator, especially one that has a genuine care and appreciation for the people they're creating content for, because it can put a lot of expectations on you, and it can put a lot of stress on you. Like I've definitely felt that, especially over the last few months, because I've been pretty much incapable of making content. Like I just had knee surgery, had a baby uh, come into our lives, and I'm just like, I have no time, I have no energy, I have no effort really being able to put forth to that. I have no more privacy anymore in many places. So it's like it's a lot harder to kind of make that content, and there's a lot of perspective shifting that has to happen as a content creator to really develop a way of being okay with that, and working through that, and being able to not people please as much, and being able to retain that sovereignty, um, and yet still find community. Right, the community, I build a community for other people, but where's my community? And that's what I've really had to shift into. um, is I call more friends now.
Mhm.
I just call them out of the blue. I called my friend Griff the other day, just called him, um, which I never would have done before. It just didn't happen. Now I do it a lot more. Um, I just talk to people as much as I can. Right. I talk to my wife a lot more, which I love. I talk to my kid, not just my baby. I have a stepson as well, and I just talk to him every once in a while. I just go and be like, "How you doing?" He's like looking away from his phone for a second, like, "I'm good," right? And I'm like, "Come on, let's talk. Let's talk." He doesn't want to talk to me, but we then have
How
some
old is
good
he?
conversation. He's 11,
Yeah.
and so he's
Yeah.
he's at that age where he's kind of he wants to do what he wants to do,
Yeah.
and and I'm not always that, right, like how it used to be. There's a lot of transitions in my life trying to work through those perspective shifting moments, and kind of developing my newer forms of community that can fit within my life. And I think that's a struggle for a lot of people throughout life. Trauma just makes it even more difficult. Like I remember last year, um, when I lost my soldier in uh, June, someone that I he was under my command in Afghanistan in 2019, and he had a firearms related accident in June, and died. I lost my third uh, our third miscarriage in, I think, July or August. Then I went to sniper school, got COVID, and I lost my grandpa while I was on quarantine in September. And just hit after hit after hit last year.
Yeah.
But my ability to work through that was, I look back and I'm like, it was incredible, because I had built a community around me that was there, right? Like
Yeah.
when people knew, they called me, and they were just there, and now it's a little bit different, because I've had to kind of rebuild a different community, because I'm not as active in certain groups as I was before. Um, so life changes. I think, like, I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore, but I think
Well, I
ultimately,
think it's really important because we don't have like a town that we live in, right? We live in
yeah,
our little community and it's a town, and we go to the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and we live there our whole lives, right? And our grandparents lived there. Like that's not what we have anymore.
right,
And so what you're describing is what we have now,
yep,
and it does shift and it does change. And there's times we're giving and I think because you're a content creator, you're always giving, but you need to be aware of,
Mhm.
okay, this is giving to the point where I'm depleted. I need to find a place to get,
Yep.
and I need to find stuff that fills me up. And I think it's a great conversation. Like, I don't feel like I have a ton to add to, like, I'm like, we need community, but like, I don't know what that means. So it's great that you have like that you're actually doing it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it. And again, like, it's giving and taking. Like,
Mhm.
an economy is I sell shit and you buy shit. A community is like I show up and share, and then sometimes I need you guys
Yep.
to share and support me, or I need other people to share and support me, right? And it's, taking the I do have a very good community with dear girlfriends, and it's that idea. We talk once a week, and I walk, with one of them, and we take turns, like, giving and taking. Like, one of us is a hot mess, and then the other one, and like, I think we do have that good place of responsibility. Like, if one of us is like, I don't have the capacity right now, we say that, or, it, and it's a give and take,
Yep.
so I think I do have that on that smaller level, definitely not anything on um TikTok. And then when I'm with clients, I'm giving. So I understand, like, if I'm going to be giving and giving, I've got to have a place I'm receiving,
Yep.
like you're saying. Yeah, it's good.
I
And that's
like.
so also to your point, like, about this faith, like, something in you let you know, right? You paid attention to something in you going, okay, I
Mhm.
need to take care of myself too, right? And that to me is healing. Like, you're never going to get rid of trauma, and you're never going to get rid of,
Right.
like, we're always, I think, on that pendulum of, like,
Yeah.
overgiving or isolating or whatever.
Yeah. Certainly, I love your word of economy of community. I think that's a remarkable way to put it, because it is an economy. It is something that you you know you give, you sell, you buy, right? You pick something,
Transactional,
right?
right?
It's it
Instead,
it is transactional. And I think, and I talk to a lot of my clients are probably looking at this particular phrase of transactional and being like, but wait a second, right? Because I don't like the idea of necessarily focusing on transactional. When I talk about values, I talk about very different values. Aren't transactional, right?
right,
Love is not transactional.
right.
It's love is charity. In many ways, I look at love as a value, as my value. Love is an action without expectation, right? And so I give to people without an expectation of getting something in return. But me and my wife, our relationship creates the transaction, or the necessity for the transaction, right? It's not the value of love, right? I give to my wife because I love and appreciate her. But we have built a relationship that also shows that she does the same to me. And we've negotiated that in the relationship, in the marriage that we both created, right? And I think this is something that a lot of people need to really take into account. You build a relationship together. Like, it's not a contract where you sit down and are like, okay, let's write in this you're going to do this every day. No, it's a conversation that never ends, and you're constantly building that relationship of recognizing who this person is. If this person, before you get married, doesn't want to support you and be part of your life and love the things that you love, they're not going to do that after you get married. And like, understanding that is paramount to building a healthy relationship and a healthy marriage. Now, I've only been married for a few years, so I can't tell you if it's working or not. It's working so far, but um, I'm happy. Val is happy, and we're struggling, right? Like, we have a new baby, and that's not easy, but we're struggling together. And that's we've
Yeah,
built a mini community between me and her and our family, that we aren't isolating each other to a point of I'm struggling alone or she's struggling alone. We actively look at each other and say, I'm struggling. And then we have a conversation about it. We talk about it. And that's built into our contract and our relationship that's the love. We don't expect it, but we built that in. So that relationship takes on the transaction, but the value of who I am, how I look at love, that doesn't take on the transaction. I give regardless of whether she loves me or not. But the beautiful thing is that she also loves me. And
Mhm.
we love each other the same. We both define love as the same thing. Because that was like when I was dating, that was one of my first questions. How do you define love?
Oh my gosh, that's great. First date ish
Before I did that via
before your
text.
first date.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with her, I did it via text because we got into a deep conversation. I asked her like, how do you define love? And she still has the screenshots of it.
I'm sure she does.
And I think that's when I knew, because like when I went on that date, I had been dating for, a few months at that point, and I had gone on. I was actively looking for someone that I was like, I want to spend the rest of my life with someone. I'm looking for that. So I had rules, and one of the rules was like, first date, no physical contact, right? Like I'm no kissing, no nothing beyond that, right? Um, and the when I first met her, like physically, I just remember my whole body just being like, wow, this is it, right? Like it wasn't love at first sight, it was love at first feeling. And I remember looking at her and just being like, I feel safe with you, right? And a feeling I've never had with anyone before that. And we proceeded to have a conversation in a bar. Keep in mind, she didn't know that I didn't drink. Um, but our first date was at a bar. She said we should go to Camp Bar, which didn't serve food. It was like one of the only bars in the area that
Hmm.
didn't serve food because I was like really hungry. Um, but uh,
Yeah, they have like a pretzel. You get
yeah,
like a pretzel.
I was
Yeah.
like, I had popcorn.
Yeah, that's
But
fun.
we talked for like 4 hours, and then she kissed me, and so she broke my rule, and it just kind of, and here we are now, like obviously married, but um she and I, we built our relationship together, and we've developed it, we've defined it, we've fought through the adversity. Like we got married, and 2 months later I was going to Afghanistan,
Hmm.
and that was not intended, right? Like that was, all by circumstance. Like a month before the wedding, we found out I was going to Afghanistan in November, and we got married in September. We survived that. We survived COVID. We survived. We're surviving a baby right now. Like we continue to face the hardest things I think relationships have to face, and we continue to survive. And I, we've built that together, right? It's not me, it's not her, it's us, and
Yeah.
it's
And
powerful.
yeah, it is. It's beautiful and amazing and it's good. Um, and I think it's great, you know, the course of this conversation, because I'm like, the best thing that we all need is community. And you're like, here's community. Here's how I do it here. Here's how I do it here. Here's how I do it in my marriage. But it's that same idea, to circle back to like, we're gonna have electric shocks like that,
Yeah,
that study that they did. There are gonna be electric shocks like COVID and
yeah,
like struggles. And some are even good, like moving to a new city for a new job, right?
yep,
But sharing it, is what you're really describing, and
yep,
showing up, you know, because you're agreeing to take some of that electric shock, like,
yeah,
right? Like
right,
one person could stand there and be like, nah, like you take it all, right?
yeah,
So there's this like agreeing, we're gonna do this together. And I think part of the problem and a symptom of our sick community is this sterilization. Like we just want it all good all the time, and we want it to look good, and we don't want to talk about taboo, and we don't want to go through pain, and we don't want to share with you because you might break our rules, which I think is fantastic. Like we set up
yep,
rules that
yep,
it's and then life is messy. And yeah, I think that's just beautiful. I mean, obviously that's a more intimate relationship, but I think it's the same. I think it's
mhm,
the same idea that we choose to be with people together, just choosing to walk through life with them. And I think I guess I'm always very idealistic that we are learning how to do this and figuring out what it looks like when we live, thousands of miles away from some of the people and
Yep.
won't ever meet them in person. But the need is there.
Yep.
The need is definitely there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
love
don't
it.
think you have to be physically present to create community that matters.
Mhm.
Not anymore.
No, I've definitely experienced that. And so, yeah, I think it's all an invitation to like find that for yourself. And if you're in something that feels shitty, keep looking for
Yeah.
something else. And if like, okay, I'm part of this, I'm scared of everybody, I can't open up, I've got walls, like do the work like you're talking about to heal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked for a long time.
I know.
Uh, this is going to be one of those long ones, and I hope people have made it to this far. And I don't want to take up any more of your night. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, it's
Um,
awesome. I love it.
so, Cyrina, I'm gonna ask you the final question, and then you can kind of one answer that, but also then kind of tell people where they can find you, and I'll post your
Yeah.
links and everything. But, um, Cyrina, if there's one message that you could leave the world, what would it be?
It's always the same, that we can heal. Because I think when we get in dark places, it's because we've lost that hope and that possibility, or we've been banging our head against the wall or trying lots of different things and we haven't been able to. And so we get to the point where we think, oh God, maybe I just can't. So it's that you can heal. Your brain literally can change, and not to give up, and if you're here, you're in a really good place, and you reach out and it takes courage, but that we can heal, that you actually can heal. And it doesn't matter how much shit you've been through, like you can. That's the main thing. And then, the way that I work with people doing that is, like I talked about, if there's stuff in your subconscious or, that needs addressing, or you need a really safe place. The thing about hypnotherapy that's really powerful is it's a little like anesthesia, because these things that we go and we need to, you know, look at and need to be resolved. This is the most loving, peaceful kind. You're not reliving any trauma. You're just understanding, okay, here's what's still messing with me and releasing it. And that's, how I work with people, and also from the stance that I have also done this work. So I'm bringing you,
Yeah.
through and I view it as sacred space and everything. So yeah, the kick-ass life is when you get to exactly what you described, like you get to have the capacity to handle whatever life throws at you and show up who you really are on this planet. Like I don't think there's anything else better. And that's how you live,
Yeah.
like to be, right? Your best life. And that's the whole point. So yeah, that's really what I believe. Like my that's why I'm here, to help people do that and hang out in that space of the pain and the unknown and stuff until it's resolved.
Well, I think we're both examples of that, of the ability that the human body can heal, because we've both been through a remarkable amount of things. Obviously, my people know my story, and your people know yours, and now we do actually know a lot more about yours. Um, it's true. I completely agree, and I'll never disagree, because I've done it. You've done it. We've done it. And we're continuing to build a community that also does it, right? And every day I walk my clients through those things, and I look back now on clients who've been with me for a year and 2 years, and every once in a while I'm like, hey, you remember our first session, and you remember before you met me, and they're like, wow, right? Like like when you make that recognition of just how far you've come, it's so possible. I've worked with so many people of such with such difficult situations. It's so possible, and I'm so glad you're doing the work that you're doing. I'm so glad you had the opportunity, or took the opportunity, to come on this podcast, because it's been a great conversation as always. Um, and I'm sure we'll be meeting again soon. I have no doubt. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, Cyrina, I just want to thank you for everything, for being here and being so honest and being so open, being able to express and share everything that you've shared with us. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it. It's so good.
And I want to thank everyone who is still listening. And for those of you who are, we'll catch you next time on the Newland Experience. And that's it.